Playing by the rules. Has the person you consider to be your best friend ever behaved in a way that you felt was inappropriate? What were you doing at that time? You may have kept silent, but it sounds like you should have told your friend what you were thinking. You should read this story of the two friends who had to decide on what was more important to them, their sense of what's good and wrong, or their friendship with one another. Juman both Sheikh and Algo Chaudhry were loyal companions to one another. Because of the depth of their connection with one another, if one of them left the town, the other made sure that the other's family was taken care of. Both held a great deal of respect in the community where they lived. Juman's elderly aunt owned some property and was a wealthy benefactor. She gave it to him with the condition that she would continue to live with him and that he would be responsible for her care. The system served its purpose admirably over a few years. After that, the circumstances were different. Juman and his family had had enough of their elderly cousin for quite some time. Juman's attitude towards her changed to match that of his wife, who resented the elderly woman requesting even the smallest amount of food daily. She took these insults in stride and continued to eat, while doing so for several months. However, there is a limit to one's patience. One day, she shared the following with Juman: My son, it is now quite clear that you do not wish for me to reside in your home. I would be grateful if you could provide me with a sum of money each month to use towards the construction of a separate kitchen. My wife is the most experienced when it comes to managing the household. Have some patience, Juman admonished unashamedly. This infuriated his aunt to the point where she decided to bring the matter up in front of the village panchayat. The elderly woman could be heard describing her situation to the people and pleading for their assistance over several days. Many felt sorry for her, others mocked her, and some gave her advice to patch things up with her nephew and his wife. Others still laughed at her. At long last, she made her way to Algo Chaudhry and engaged in conversation with him. As you probably already know, Chachi Juman is one of my closest friends. How am I supposed to compete with him? Algo stated. The elderly woman pleaded with her son, asking, "But is it right, my son, to keep quiet and not speak what you feel is reasonable and fair?" She invited them to the panchayat and urged them to tell the truth there. Algo didn't reply. However, he couldn't get her comments out of his head. That very same evening, the panchayat was conducted underneath an old banyan tree. After taking the microphone, Juman remarked, "The voice of the panchayat is the voice of God. Allow my aunt to make the nominations for the head of the panchayat. I will respect the choice that she makes." The panchayat does not have any friends or enemies. The elderly woman inquired aloud, "What do you say to Algo Chaudhry?" "Fine," Juman responded, attempting to conceal his happiness at this stroke of good luck that came out of nowhere. Algo stated to Chachi, "You are aware of my friendship with Juman," and went on to say that to Juman, The aunt said, I know that, but I also know that you would not sacrifice your conscience for the sake of friendship. I know both of those things. The aunt said, God resides at the center of the panchayat, and the voice of the panchayat is God's voice. And the elderly woman went on to clarify her position. Juman, Algo continued, you and I have known each other for a very long time. I hold your aunt in the same high regard as I do you. Now I am a panchayat. In my eyes, both you and your aunt have the same value. What arguments can you use to defend yourself? My aunt gave me her land 3 years ago, said Juman at the beginning of their conversation. I committed to providing for her financial needs for as long as she lived. I have done all I could. There have been a few arguments between my wife and her, but I'm powerless to stop them from happening. My aunt has recently requested that I pay her a monthly stipend. This is not going to work out. That is the last thing I need to say. Algo and a few other people put Juman through a round of cross examination. After that, Algo made the following statement: we have investigated the case attentively. In our judgment, Juman is obligated to make a monthly allowance pay to his aunt. Failing to do so will result in the property being returned to her. After some time had passed, the two bodies were hardly ever seen together. They were no longer able to maintain their friendship with one another. Juman was Algo's adversary and sought Algo's vengeance. As the days went by, Algo Chaudhry's bad luck continued, and he eventually found himself in a difficult situation. One of his magnificent pair of bullocks passed away, and he parted ways with the other by selling it to the Samju Sahu, a rural cart driver. It was agreed upon that Sahu would make the payment for the bullock 1 month after the transaction had place. It was just a matter of time before the bullock passed away within a month. Several months after the death of the bullock, Algo reminded Sahu of the money that he still owed, but hadn't paid yet. Sahu became irritated. I'm sorry, but I don't have the means to compensate you for the miserable animal that you sold to me. He did nothing but bring destruction upon us. A bullock is mine to care for. Take it for a spin for a month, and then bring it back to me. Indignantly, he proclaimed that there would be no payment for the slain bullock. Olga concluded that the panchayat should hear the case. The preparation for hosting the panchayat were undertaken for the second time in a short period, a few months, and both parties started contacting individuals to gain their support. Under the venerable banyan tree, the panchayat was carried out. After taking the microphone, Algo declared, "The voice of the panchayat is the voice of God. Allow Sahu to make the nominations for the head panchayat. I will respect the choice that he makes." Sahu recognized his opportunity, and he suggested that they use the name Juman. The news caused Algu's heart to sink, and he became pale. But what options did he have? As soon as Juman became head of the panchayat, he had an epiphany about the weight of his responsibilities as a judge and the honor that came with his position. From his elevated vantage point, was it possible for him to exact revenge at this point? He continued to think about it. No, he must not permit his own emotions to prevent him from telling the truth and carrying out justice. Both Algo and Sahu presented their sides of the argument. They were subjected to cross-examination, and the matter was given careful consideration. After that, Juman took a stand and made the following announcement. In our opinion, Sahu ought to pay Algo the price of the bullock. When Sahu purchased the bullock, it didn't have any disabilities or diseases associated with it. It was a terrible thing that the bullock had to die, but Algo is not to blame for that in any way. Algo was unable to keep his emotions in check. He stepped up and shouted in a booming voice over and over, "Victory to the panchayat!" This is how justice is done. The voice of the panchayat is where God may be heard. Shortly after that, Juman went up to Algo, hugged him, and stated, "Since the previous panchayat, I had been your enemy. It wasn't until today that I understood what it meant to be a panchayat. There is no such thing as a friend or foe to a panchayat. Only fairness is familiar to him." No one should stray from the path of justice and truth out of affection or animosity against another. Algo sobbed as he comforted his friend and embraced him. In the end, his tears cleared the air of any remaining confusion that had lingered between the two of them. This is the narrative of playing by the rules.